It's working. Hey, Patrick. Thanks very much. Might be a little bit crooked here, everybody. Was it really 2014 we met in person? I had no idea it was that many years ago. It was like 7 years ago. I only got married 10 years ago. Like I said, I went from 0 to 9 kids in 6 years. We're just adopting a 10th kid right now, funny enough. So I am going to talk about building your first sales team. And by the way, Patrick, you mentioned a couple of books. Obviously, the English titles are Predictable Revenue, From Impossible to Inevitable. A lot of what I'll be presenting is from that second book, The Impossible to Inevitable, which in Portuguese is a version called Crescimento. So let me share my screen and we'll get going. I'm in the UK right now. We moved here in early last January. So we just for personal reasons. It's working? Yep, okay, just checking. Okay. As Patrick mentioned, there's a big family here. We're most in the UK. 6 of the now 10 kids are here in the, actually no, sorry, 7 of the kids are gonna be here in the UK. 3 in Los Angeles going to university. Here are the couple books that are in Portuguese. We're gonna share some highlights. Now, the fundamental idea around building your sales team, much less your first one, there's really one key idea, and this really, it's so important, and it's more common, but still not the way people do it. And it's especially important when you have 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 salespeople or 200. But even when you're first starting, it's still so key. And this is the idea of sales specialization. I like to say, I don't know any coach of a sports team that would go out and tell all their players, hey, everybody attack and everybody defend. That team would never win. It's always saying, all right, we've got attackers, we've got defenders, we've got midfield, we've got goalie. Right? Each person has their specialty. And that is really the idea that you need to think about. And yes, once you've got a few people, these are the classic roles in the books, right? There's basically, if you have inbound leads, someone who's responding to them, someone who's prospecting, someone who's focused on signing new customers, and other functions on managing current customers. So we're going to go to, what if you don't have a team at all, right? Where do you start? So the thing to keep in mind is this is about focus. People doing fewer things better. That's really what the principle is behind this, the thing that makes this work. Why, when you have people focused on outbound prospecting, it works better. When you have them focused on inbound lead response, it works better, right? If you get a sports team, if you have attackers who just attack. Now, the way that you apply that could be in many different ways. You could have people who are dedicated just to certain industries, certain geographies, certain functions. But it is really the core of creating a team, even from the beginning. Oh, there's some of the kids playing. We've got even some friends over. It's never quiet here. So not only do we have that many kids, there's also 4 dogs who live here. But this specialization of roles is really key to predictability. So when you create these roles, the insights you get from having different people doing different things, and the scalability and the ability to hire and ramp and train people is all possible. And when you don't do it, it's almost impossible. Like when you have your salespeople doing everything, it's very complicated and very challenging. So let's just talk, if you are building something from scratch, you're starting at the very beginning, you don't have anybody, let's go through these 4 phases. And I mentioned these 4 phases. This is out of a section from the Crescimento book, or in English, From Impossible to Inevitable. So the first phase is making sure that the CEO, or whatever the founder is, your role, is actually involved in selling and selling. This is really important because not only do you take ownership of what it's like to sell, you get that hands-on feeling, the hands-on experience for selling and learning what works and what doesn't work. Why do people actually buy? You have your hypotheses, but when people are ready, when you're asking them to part with money and sign a contract, whether it's digital, a credit card, an invoice, things change, right? Your hypotheses are going to be wrong in some ways, maybe right in other ways. And there's no better way to really understand what your customers, like who is going to buy, and use it then by talking to them and working with them. Right? So being involved in the sales process is important. Now, you might be the person doing all the sales. You might have someone else who's selling, but you're involved in some way. The answer is you're still involved in some way, at least for the first 10 or 20 customers. Okay, so then let's just assume that you're the most companies, you're the CEO, you're doing all the selling. Maybe you've got some developers on the team, maybe you've got some service delivery people, whatever it is, but you're the person doing the selling. So the first hire after that, and this is usually assuming that you haven't built a sales team before. And then maybe you haven't even hired or managed salespeople before. And look, if you haven't done that job, how would you know how to hire the right person? Right? If you hadn't been a developer, how would you know how to hire developers? You wouldn't. So there's two things. One is to take baby steps. You're learning as you're going. So one of the baby steps is assuming, hey, you hire an SDR, so like a sales development rep. Really, it's a junior person, a junior salesperson that would handle a lot of the early customer touches, right? Appointment setting, whether they're an inbound lead or they're doing some prospecting. They're trying to take over the things that are low value for you. The CEO, you would still continue to do later stage selling and proposals and maybe onboarding, whatever the customers need, but trying to offload, delegate to someone the things you don't want to do and that are not as important for you. The nice thing is when there's an SDR doing this, they can actually be much more effective at this because they can focus on it. So let's say that's working. And let's say over 3 months, you get into a rhythm, get some sales, you get some process. So now you're in a better place to hire a salesperson or an account executive to focus on the sales part and to help coach them on this. A common mistake is for a CEO to hire a senior salesperson too soon, and that person fails. And there are different reasons for this. One, the CEO, I'm just going to use the word CEO, tends to have kind of founder's magic. They also tend to have unrealistic expectations of how long or fast it will be for a new salesperson to ramp up. It usually takes longer than they expect. So again, by breaking this into more smaller steps, you're taking a lot of the risk out of it. This is not about maximizing the speed to growth. This is about minimizing the risk and increasing the learning and trying to take one step forward at a time versus trying to run too fast and hiring the wrong people and having to go backwards many steps. So let's say you've got that. The CEO is selling in phase 2. The SDR is doing the lead gen part. The salesperson is doing selling with the CEO still. So it's really 3 people selling, CEO, SDR, AE. That's working. Another few months go by, there's more confidence, better results. Now you kind of double it. You get another SDR, another salesperson. All right, you notice with one SDR, one salesperson, you're still focused on different roles. Now that you've got 2 of each, and again, this is not an absolute, this is a guideline because everyone will do it differently. But now you can kind of do inbound, outbound. There's different ways you can even further focus to different people. And lastly, you would look at doing a sales leader. And typically that's, once the team is successful, it's easier to hire a sales leader that is credible and invaluable and experienced. All right, so again, going back to as you make your hires, I think here, take smaller steps. Don't try to run too fast. Make sure each person is focused and is as specific a job as possible. And the last thing is you need to find someone, a coach, a mentor, board member, investor, friend, consultant, mentor, someone who has hired salespeople before, managed them, that you can go to for advice, whether that's free or paid. Another point is, let's say you are an executive and you're looking to your CEO, COO, you're looking to hire a head of sales. Just realize, depending on where you're at, and I'm assuming most of you are under this, say million, in this case, like a few million hey alleys per year. That kind of person you're hiring is going to be different if you're looking at the leader versus as you get bigger. Kind of knowing what kind of person you're looking for the role today. And if you are looking at actually hiring a leader, here's some advice that is, again, just keep an eye out, right? If you're looking to hire a leader and someone who's actually already got experience, not someone who's junior who's going to grow into the role, but someone who's got experience, you should be learning from them. If you're looking to hire a VP of sales and you feel like you're teaching them things, that's not a good fit. When they come in, they should be able to bring in great people. Right? As well as you should see some kind of result within a sales cycle. That might be, it may not be revenue, it might be a result in some way, but you can see there's some tangible movement. And last, don't, just because they worked at a big name doesn't mean they're going to be great. So really kind of look at the person and their fit. Don't be blinded by the resume and any kind of fancy companies they've looked at. And lastly, there's still a lot of turmoil in the world. If you're dealing with this, you might have to go back to doing things like just, changing or throwing away old expectations. The way things worked last year or 2 years ago might not be relevant to you today. The number of activities, the type of compensation structure, the quotas they have, there's a lot of change still happening in the world. Rather than trying to, especially early stage companies, trying to kind of forecast with some thinking you have like a believable plan, kind of scenario plan. This is where we think things could go, if it goes well or not so well, and be ready to be very adaptable and set the expectations with your investors and executives that, hey, things could change a lot. People love to feel like, oh, because the spreadsheet says it's going to work this way, now I feel safe because it's going to work this way. And it never does. If you have a very challenging time or there's a lot of learning, so that could be a later stage company with troubles or an early stage company before you have predictability, just be really open to being adaptable with your quotas, compensation, and goals, which could be day to day, week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter. Being adaptable too is vital, that you communicate well with your team about that. And lastly, if things go back into lockdown or open up, just make sure you've got an ability to adjust with the changing situation in the world. So the last point there was, for your people, the more you can involve them in planning so they know what's happening and they can put their voice in, the more bought in they'll be, and there'll be more trust. It'll give you more leeway to make the changes you might want to take. So best way to find me for business is on LinkedIn, this link. Family, I don't do a post a lot on Instagram, once in a while. And of course, we've got the heyciateprevisivel.com site and team there. So let me stop this. And thank you very much, everyone, for the SaaStock, to be sharing, to doing this to really help educate and support and inspire entrepreneurs there in Brazil, and especially Patrick. I know you've been at it for a long time. And I say that in a complimentary way, not in a, wow, you're getting older way, because yeah.
No, thanks very much, Aaron. No, none taken. And we like the experience, and we also like the new dynamics coming up. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. Very valuable, Aaron, and to understand the laser-focused nuances of really getting that first go-to-market set up and first sales team. So thanks a lot for sharing those insights. Very valuable.
My pleasure.